The biggest question with the Minnesota Vikings offseason is what are they going to do with Kirk Cousins and his $45 million cap hit? Will they extend him? Will they add some void years? Will they trade him? They're not going to cut him, and he's probably not going to take a pay cut, so probably take those off the table. But Vikings.com team writer Eric Smith, who does phenomenal work, did up a mailbag, and someone just straight up asked him, what's going to happen with Kirk Cousins? Now, a couple things here. Well, obviously, Eric can't just be truthful, because of the team that employs him, because he can't just be like, the Vikings should trade his ass, print, and then the Vikings will be like, hey, and then they extend Kirk Cousins on a 3-year deal. It's probably not going to fly, right? Also, how much inside information, how much team propaganda is being pushed in these pieces? It's always very interesting, because when people like when Wabi back in the day was in the fold, the people criticize him like, Wabi, you're not being objective. Of course not. It's not so much a journalism job as it is a PR job, but like I said, is what it is. Eric does great work, and we're going to dive on in because I mean it's really good laying out the options that the Vikings do have here. So Darla Balk, will Kirk Cousins remain in Minnesota? Now, part of me thinks that that wasn't as succinct in the mailbag, but whatever. Darla has asked the $1 million question. Well, $35 million guaranteed, $45 million cap hit. And it's one of the dozens and dozens of Vikings fans have sent me in recent weeks. I would say that Kirk Cousins is probably 90% of the mailbag. So here it is, a mostly Cousins-specific mailbag that will examine the 3 options the Vikings have with the quarterback. Before we get started, a few things of note. First, I won't be giving my opinion on what I think the Vikings should or will do. So that's interesting. So that means that does thinly imply that the opinion is contrary to what he's going to lay out. I don't know. As I've stated numerous times, that isn't my role here. Instead, we'll objectively look at the 3 options, letting him play out the final year of his deal, extending or restructuring or trading him, and then what do it mean for the franchise. Second, take a long, deep breath before reading this. There are plenty of passionate opinions on Cousins out there, no matter where you fall, blah, blah, blah. And finally, everyone needs to know, new league year starts 3 p.m. March 16th. Patience. That's like a week away. Anyway, Vikings GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah said as much in the last week. Here's a combine. Quote, this is Kwesi. Ultimately, with all things, you have options just like players have options. And ultimately, we're trying to do the best thing for us. All these things are uncertain. How he's going to play. What's the market going to be? All these things, this puzzle. And ultimately, you're just trying to answer it, not knowing what's going to happen. So I wish I could tell you for certain anything, everything's in play, and I hate to be that general, but everything's in play with every player, and everybody's going to get up there and say that, but it is just the truth. And I think that the Vikings and Kwesi and O'Connell have hedged their bets to a large extent, where they talk up Kirk Cousins. They talked about how they're excited to work with him, especially O'Connell. But then Kwesi says all options are open. And it does make sense because all options are open. Plus, I mean, you're not going to be like, Kwesi's not going to come in as like, Kirk Cousins' is ass. Thank you. And then it's like, hey, calling out teams. Hey, Browns, would you like to trade for Kirk Cousins? He's really, really good. Andrew Berry, what's up? No, it's probably not going to happen. Continues. With that, let's get into why the Vikings would consider letting Cousins simply play out the final year of his current deal, which might be the least likely option. Well, if you're saying playing out the last year of his deal as is, $35 million base salary, $45 million cap hit. Now, I think that the most likely outcome is they add void years to his deal, spread out the cap hit. We'll get into that. To be upfront, this probably is the least likely option between the two sides. Both the Vikings and Cousins would prefer to have a long-term plan in place sooner rather than later, and letting number 8 simply play out the final year doesn't solve that issue. However, it's tempting to think of what Cousins will look like when Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell's offense. Minnesota has undergone a culture shift in the recent weeks, and O'Connell's penchant and passion for offense, that's good alliteration, is a stark contrast to the defense mindset of former head coach Mike Zimmer. Team shade. I love it. Perhaps Cousins has been held back by a more conservative approach in recent years. Oh, baby. I love it. I love it, man. And is ready to flourish in O'Connell's system. If that were to happen, like, did Zimmer not say hi to Smitty in the hallway like Brian O'Neill? Because for team writing, that's That's a flamethrower, man. If that were to happen, then maybe the sides come to some sort of agreement next offseason. The reason for letting Cousins play this year out would be a feeling out period of sorts for both sides. Again, while that doesn't solve much long-term or provide relief against the salary cap, it's also one of 3 options the Vikings currently have. It's for a possible extension. So Cousins extension. We've played this scenario back in 2020 when Cousins and the front office agreed to a 2-year extension that gave the Vikings some salary cap relief on the front end, but backloaded the contract with dollars. Yes, it did. That's where it is now. Vikings Cousins $45 million cap hit, 3rd largest of any player in the league behind Matt Ryan and Aaron Rodgers. A restructure and an extension would make financial yeah, that makes sense. Cousins will be 34 when the 2022 season starts, and while maybe he would be nearing the end of his career in a previous NFL era, plenty of quarterbacks have shown they can still play and play well into their late 30s. Yada yada yada. Plus, this is an important point. Cousins is a good quarterback. Propaganda machine. Is he ever going to be the best quarterback, best in the league at his position? Probably not. But could he be a top 5 guy given the absolute right circumstances? I could see it. Yes, I do agree with that. And as of right now, Kirk Cousins vacillates. He's a top 9-10 quarterback on a given day. And if they get the offensive line right and also bring in Kevin O'Connell as opposed to Clint Kubiak, who's trying his best, but he was a neophyte, and Zimmer obviously did not see eye to eye with Cousins, I'm excited to see what could happen, right? And if we like mentioned above, if Flores on O'Connell, it wouldn't be a shocker. The guy has always been among the league's most accurate and cerebral quarterbacks and has plenty of arm talent. Agreed. Money, of course, blah, 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 blah. Man, people really send in long-ass questions. Anyway, powerful Byron in the city. I'm not sure if Kwesi reads mailbag, or if he does. The man is much, much smarter than I am and doesn't need my help or advice deciding on how to build a football team. However, if we were to trade Cousins, the third and last option we'll cover here, then this new regime would start out with a bang in terms of a newsworthy move. And what would a Cousins trade look like? However, let's say that if Vikings were to offer more money up front, take on $20 million of Cousins' contract instead of the original $10 million. So in terms of cap hit, not his base salary, maybe that increases the Vikings' return. That's just one hypothetical thought, as you could sit here and debate the numbers all day. The bigger question we need to ask is, what would trading Cousins mean for the Vikings? For one, it would mean a total clean slate as adofo-mensah O'Connell era begins in Minnesota. Vikings might also shoot to the top of the list in terms of teams that could trade for a quarterback high in the 2022 or 2023 draft. In short term, a trade could potentially mean something for Kellen Mond too. Just a little bit. Blah, 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 Cousins, blah, 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 blah. All right, yeah, so that's it. Yeah, so going through the 3 options where Kirk Cousins, I think that him just playing out his deal this year as is, I think that is the least likely scenario for the Vikings. I think that they're going to try to have their cake and eat it too. I don't think that Kwesi and O'Connell want to attach their legacy to a 34-year-old Kirk Cousins and just sign him up for a 2-3 year extension, where basically they're just putting themselves in the same spot as they did 2 years ago when Spielman signed up the extension, where getting cap space and you'll deal with it later. Well, later always comes around, even though #cap is a myth. I don't think that they're going to trade him. I just really don't think that's going to happen. So I think they're going to find the happy medium and add those void years, spread out his cap hit, allow the Vikings do some things in free agency as well as retain a couple guys. And if you're Cousins and his agent, and you're seeing that, hey, Kevin O'Connell and his offense, I could have a phenomenal season. I could have a top 5 quarterback season. I could have a Dak Prescott type season. And then I could get paid next offseason where I'll be a true free agent. Either the Vikings tag me, extend me, or I get paid somewhere else. And instead of an extension where you're looking at $35 million a year, maybe you're looking at 40. All right, so that's the gamble that I and Kirk Cousins and his agent may be willing to take, and maybe the Vikings will be too, because, hey, if Kirk Cousins plays like a top 5 quarterback and the Vikings make some noise in 2022, they'll be fine. They'll be fine extending Kirk Cousins a long time for $40 million. The cap is going up in 2023. Some of the other dead money is coming off the cap this year, a la Anthony Barr. So it's possible. But yeah, I did like the walkthrough of what Smitty was talking about there. But your thoughts on our thoughts on his thoughts. Vikings options with Kirk Cousins. Vikings.com. Get into it. Also, a little bit of heat. Love it. Let us know your thoughts on his thoughts, on everyone's thoughts, all the thoughts. Let us know in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support the work? Put a little something in the Venmo. But until next time, Skull Production Value.